Blood Money, episode 87 with Karen Kingston. This is a fight to save civilization. All right, we're on the latest episode of Blood Money with the amazing Karen Kingston. How you doing, Karen?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for coming to our Blood Money podcast. I'm often, when I'm talking to people out in the freedom world, your name is always mentioned. You're one of the most highly respected individuals out there. And your resume and bio, I think, speaks for itself. I mean, you've had a lot of accomplishments in, the pharmaceutical world as a consultant. And it seems as though your journey kind of took like a hard turn at one point. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there was a couple hard rights and lefts there in
Uh-huh.
in my journey. But if you're like referring to like when I came came forward regarding the injections, that was in May of 2021 when I officially sent out a communication. And what had happened before then. So a little bit about my background is I did have a firm called Veritage. I still keep the shell company that I founded in 2007. So, we were a full service agency for pharmaceuticals, medical devices, biotechnology. So I had a lot of, PhDs, MBAs. I had a bunch of CGI artists. I used to hire the guys from Sony and Marvel Films. So we did some really cool uh, animations and visuals and stuff. I was the first firm to bring it into certain sectors in the pharmaceutical industry, and the doctors and were very impressed with the visuals. So engagement, as you know, is really important. So visual aesthetics. But then I dissolved it when I went through a divorce in 2011 and took a few years off. And I had my son was young, when he was 6. So I really, when I went back to work, I didn't actually, fully go back. I would get interim jobs being like a chief marketing officer for non-US companies. I worked for an Israeli company for a few years. I did work for an East Coast company, nutraceutical company, and that was, working in medical device and biotech. I mean, I could do that job with my eyes closed. So that was pretty easy gig for me. And I call them gig. I shouldn't call them gigs, right? But I call them gig works. And the last gig I worked on was launching a platform for surgical training for fellowships within a specific segment of the industry. And during that time period, was COVID, and then they announced the vaccines rollout. And I think like everyone, most of us knew like 2 weeks into the lockdown. I knew before then, like something wasn't right. It just seemed like everyone was going along with this theater for whatever reason. But then when they announced, these warp speed vaccines, I knew that was extremely unsafe to do, and but when they first authorized them, they said, okay, we're just going to authorize these for 18 and old, for 18. And even though they had authorized them for 16 and older, I thought, oh, never in a million anyone in their right mind going to allow their 16 or 17-year-old to be injected. Like, they rolled out to 85 and 75. And, I refused to let my 82-year-old mother get injected. We had a lot of back and forth on that. But then when they announced that they were going to kind of redo these trials for the 12 to 15-year-olds, and they authorized it for the 12 to 15-year-olds prior to the authorization, which was on May 10th or May 11th of 2021. When they started discussing that in the news, it was like a millstone, from scriptures, like a millstone was tied around my neck. And God put on my heart to look into this, just saying I would treat a large 6 or 7 figure client. You go through the phase 3 data that they file, and you go through the clinical publications that you can find, regarding the mechanisms of action. And I don't usually look at the patents unless I'm doing IP portfolio analysis or it's prior, if we're doing a pitch. So we don't have any information regarding a product. You'll go into the patent to find out some specifics about a product and devices. You get the CAD files. So anyway, I didn't really want to look into it, but I downloaded the phase 3. I downloaded the initial new drug applications, and that was in like March or April-ish of 2021. And when I downloaded the phase 3 data, less than 200 people around the globe had looked at it, and the IND was less than 100.
Mhm.
The IND is a new drug application.
Is
So
what? Sorry, could you repeat that? Is what?
the phase 3 trial
Mhm.
data, which is the data that the FDA, the Pfizer submits to the FDA to get, typically would be to get FDA approval. So it's your 2-year data that you normally would submit,
Yeah.
but this, this was just 6-month data. It was really
You
2-month
said
data,
the
is what it was.
IND data. The IND stands for what?
Not data, the IND, sorry, did I say data? The IND application, the initial new drug
Yeah.
application. So that was submitted in April of 2020 by Pfizer to the FDA to say, this is how we're going to conduct our phase 1, 2, and 3 trials. This is the information we have on animals. This is how we're going to proceed. And if you read that, it's criminal what they submitted to the FDA. The FDA should have never approved the initial new drug application. But what was alarming is that less than 100 people had looked at the initial new drug application around the globe.
Wow. Wow.
So, and I can tell you that it was never blinded, by the way. The people that, the administrators of the injections knew whether or not people were getting placebo or an injection. So it was never even a blinded trial.
Mhm.
And it's a very damning document. And I know that because it's been taken offline.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so, God asked me to look into that. I mean, it was just on my heart and I just didn't want to do it. And,
I mean, let me ask you, in terms of like God putting something like that on your heart, was this like one of the more significant moments in your life that happened? I mean, have you felt pressurized to take certain stands prior to this because it felt like the moral and righteous thing to do?
No, so let me tell you the story about how God put this on my heart, because there's another time. They were literally, when I got messages like this, they were life or death situations when
Wow.
I kind of heard something like this happen. Yeah. Um, so what happened was, I'm a very empathetic person. I guess that's the word. I'm super sensitive. I'm very sensitive about children.
Mhm.
And so it was obviously just bothering me in my nature that they were going to be doing this to children. And I had been tracking a lot of the information, but I didn't do like a full med legal analysis on this. And normally I'd have a team of 20 people working with me to do it anyway. So it was bothering me, and it was kind of like, it was on my heart to look into it. And I was like, why would I do that? Like, no one's paying me. It's going to be, how am I going to do thousands of hours of work anyway? I mean, I wouldn't be able to get it done in a timely manner. So I kept ignoring this feeling that I had. And I got a one-way ticket not to Nineveh. I went to Mexico, and I'm like on the beach in Mexico, just bawling, just crying,
Wow.
because I'm thinking of it. So I go down to the scuba shop where I usually dive, and I had to pay some of my friends down there that live in Mexico. And I was like, go buy me a printer from Staples. And I spent the whole time in my room going through some of this information. And I came home, and I hadn't really done, I just, printed out the FDA data. I found the patents. I found the world patent for this, and it didn't read like a vaccine. It read like a bioweapon. I
Wow.
found Sinopeg in China, which made the pegylated lipid nanoparticles with graphene oxide. I found the BioNTech investor presentation with a relationship with Fossum Pharma,
Wow.
CDC database. So I found all this stuff, but I was like, okay, I don't really want to do this. Like, this is, because normally you take those documents and you get, 6 or 8 PhDs and a couple editors, and you get a account executive designers, like, and you put together a presentation. So I did it, and I came home, and I just was like, laid everything out in my dining room table, and I didn't touch it. And what happened was I was a fitness instructor prior to COVID for many years. I used to teach Zumba. I was a dance teacher in my teens and my 20s. So it was super fun. So I go back to the gym, and a woman goes over like this, timber, right? Just right in the middle of a fitness class. So for whatever reason, the fitness instructor, who was a former drill instructor with the Army, freaks
Mhm.
out. So I have to get her situated. I have to call 911. I didn't have to perform CPR, but had to test and everything, call 911, do all that. And I'm not really freaked out, because what's weird is, though, in, more than 15 years between in my teens and 20s and then in my 40s teaching fitness, I've never had anyone fall down. I've never had to even think about having to perform CPR, right? I've never had
Wow.
to do that. but for some reason, I'm just not freaked out. And I kind of knew. I was like, this happened because she was vaccinated. 2 days later, I'm going to church and I'm about to make a left into the parking lot, and there's a T-bone accident right in front of me. And this woman comes out and she looks almost possessed, and she's all tatted up, and the airbags go off, and there's 10 people standing around. And again, no one calls 911. So I've got to call 911 and wait for the cops to come and all this other stuff. And now I'm shook up because I haven't called 911 in my entire life. And now I just did it twice in 72 hours. So I go into church and we're listening to worship and, worship music. And I just kind of put my hands up and ask God to give me a comforting word. And I hear as clear as day, how many times do I need to make you call 911 before you're going to call 911 for my children?
Wow.
Yeah, I heard it like clear as day. And I, kind of got teary-eyed, and I made eye contact with my pastor. He's kind of famous, so I don't really want to mention him. And I said, I have information about the injections and how harmful they are, and he's like, well, send me an email. So I just didn't sleep for 72 hours, and I went through all the data. I don't know how I did it. As my son says, you do the best, God does the rest. And I sent it to pastors, media, like Fox News, influencers, doctors. And it was a very well-written letter, that said, this data shows it's harmful. The patents show that there's advanced nanotechnologies or advanced technologies. They target reproductive, cardiovascular, neurological, and they're targeted to cross the blood-brain barrier. And if you have an expert look at this, they'll come to the same conclusion I did, which is that these are bioweapons that are being falsely promoted as vaccines.
Wow.
That was in May of 2021, and it was ignored.
Yeah. And I mean, how deeply disappointed were you that, something like that was ignored when this is clearly so hazardous, so damaging to the population?
Well, what happened was like a week later, because I figured people needed time to go through it. Like I go and I turn on like Fox News, like and pour a glass of wine. I'm thinking, oh, I saved the world, and no one's even going to know that I did it. And that's normal because no one knows what I do. I think people don't know that people like me exist. I think doctors write the information for other doctors for educational purposes, which, they do in the peer reviewed. Actually, I write peer reviewed publications too, but I don't think they know that there's people behind the scenes. So I go and turn on Fox News, and Rand Paul had just announced whether or not this was actually a lab leak versus a natural virus. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's 2 years old data. Like, you need to be talking about the bioweapon.
No.
And what happened was I started doing just posts on social media, and then I started getting serious threats, and I had to stay with a friend, and because they were in a gated.
I mean, sorry to interrupt you. What kind of threats, like when you say serious threats?
Like violent threats.
Wow. I mean, because I read in your bio that you've been physically attacked. I mean, obviously the platform, yeah, that's pretty intense.
But yeah, I mean, you're talking about $1 trillion market, so it's not my first rodeo. Your name of your show is Blood Money. I mean, people they kill for money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like, people will, I've had police for far less threats, like $100 million deals, never mind $1 trillion deals. So it's not like I didn't expect this stuff to happen. But
that's pretty amazing. I mean, that's pretty amazing that you knew it was going to happen. You decided to do it anyways because it was a morally righteous thing to do.
Well, yeah, and I can I'll explain that in a second. So I'll explain that right now. So before I came forward and even sent that email, because I sent it just to a couple people first, and my dear friend for 25 years called me up and said, I got your email. And he said to me, and he's not a whale, so he's not like a half billionaire, but he's in with all of them.
Yeah.
And he goes, I got your email. I won't get any more Pfizer shots. My adult kids won't get it. And he goes, but cut it out. He goes, you're never going to get hired again if you keep this up. And he goes, and you're going to get yourself killed. Right.
Wow.
And so at first I was like, he's right. And I was scared for like 2 hours. And then I was like, well, no, I've got to do this. But what I had to do was, after I did send the email out, I had to go through a process of mourning, and I had to mourn everything I was afraid to lose. I mean, everything I was afraid to lose.
Wow.
And I had to mourn my greatest fear. knowing that the Chinese kind of involved with this. So I just had to, so 72 hours. I mean, I did like in the book of, what Abraham had done. I just mourned for 72 hours. And so when, as a Christian, when you do that, then all your faith is in God, right? So there's nothing to threaten or tempt you with, right? There's just nothing. You just have to stay the course. So that's what I did.
Wow. I mean, you haven't stopped. I know. Let's talk about, firstly, this latest article you put out on Substack, where your further research into these vaccines has indicated that there's electromagnetic devices within these vaccines.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not the electromagnetic devices in the vaccines that was in the early evidence in the patents. That's why people are magnetic. That's why, doctors are looking at what's in the vials underneath, microscopes, and they're seeing the self-assembling technologies. They're called nanotechnologies on the vendor's website. Moderna says they're programmable. So it's not shocking that they contain nanotechnology. We've just been gaslit by our leaders to say you can't use the term nanotech and you can't use the term bioweapon, because if you use those terms, words influence thoughts, and you'll be able to understand what's been done to you and your communities and our children. Mm-hmm. So they don't want us to use those terms. But what I was just another piece of evidence is that the DoD contract specifically discusses the lipid nanoparticle technologies, and then it cites the FDA good manufacturing practices for devices, and it cites FDA guidance for nanoparticle technologies, which are classified as electromagnetic devices. Mm-hmm. They're not biologics.
Yeah.
So if people were told, hey, this is a new vaccine that contains electromagnetic nanotechnology devices, I think most people would have said, no, thank you.
Yeah. All through fraud, I mean, what is that when you use words like activate these like particles within you? I mean, what does that mean exactly?
What do you mean?
Like, in terms of the electromagnetic particles, it sounds like they can actually do something with it beyond just the magnetic aspect of it. They could activate it, or
no, electromagnetic just means that it's an electronic device, yeah. Right? So this emits electromagnetic fields. Yeah. That's why, yeah. So that just simply means it's an electronic device, and the electromagnetic fields are also forms of radiation. So that's just this is the electromagnetic devices they're biosynthetic. What they call biosynthetic computers, but synthetic biology is simply technology that mimics biology. So there's really nothing biological about
what's the implications of that though within your body? I mean, beyond the myocarditis and all that stuff we've heard that are the side effects of the vaccine, I mean, what's the implication? I mean, what could they do with those particles that would affect our body?
It is the gene editing technology. It is the CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology that's in the nanoparticles, but there's more than one technology that's in the injections. Mm-hmm. So, if you look at the history of what we've been told to call mRNA technology, that it's really false. It's silencing RNA, it's siRNA technology and guided RNA technology that's typically done, to cells to modify ribonucleic acids, right, to produce these new RNAs that we call mod RNA. Mm-hmm. To create a biological RNA. But again, historically, Catherine Whitehead from Carnegie Mellon, who works in nanotechnology and virology, said it's so unstable that you have to do the gene editing inside the cells, inside the animal, right? Frank DeRosa, the head of Sanofi for mRNA and vaccinology, said, mRNA is so unstable, like if you look at it wrong, it falls apart. Mm-hmm. So the whole concept that anyone thought, I think most of us thought we were getting a synthetically recreated ribonucleic acids. That's what we thought mRNA was. Yeah. No, you got the technology to do the gene editing inside the cell, inside the animal. So that's what that was what we were pitched, mm-hmm. right? Was that we were going to be getting synthetic RNA. But what actually we got was the technology to then reprogram the genetic material of our cells to then produce modified RNA, to produce chimeric multi-species genetic material in our body. And that's what Dr. Malone's original patents for, right, from 1996 on the expression of exogenous DNA in mammals, right? It's to take DNA from reptiles and insects and then have it expressed in humans, because he calls them patients in the past,
Mm-hmm.
right? And using the cationic liposome, which is an ionically charged lipid, but there's no such thing as a positively charged lipid. That's a technology. But it sounds a lot better to be injected with lipids than it does to be injected with nanotechnology. So
Yeah.
just called it something else.
Wow.
But according to the FDA, like the gold nanoparticles and Pfizer's, from their internal R&D department, these are gold and graphene oxide nanoparticles, where that's what the spike protein is, at least. It can actually be quote unquote activated by electromagnetic fields external to it. So typically, it was used in cancer research. So you inject a cancer patient who has a tumor with the nanoparticles.
Mm-hmm.
The nanoparticles then congregate inside of a tumor cell, or inside of tumors,
Mm-hmm.
inside of cells, and then external electromagnetic fields are then targeted at those particles. They then absorb the energy and put off enough heat to then annihilate the cells in the tumor around it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a thermal energy that then counts it. So if these are accumulating in your brain, then it would kill the cells and the tissues. If it was in your heart, it would do that. If it was activated by an external source of math.
And activated by an external source of energy could mean like 5G waves or that sort of thing?
Come from here.
That's so like literally having that within proximity of your body could activate those electromagnetic particles.
Yeah, I mean, think about it.
Wow.
You can take your phone. I don't do this, but I hear people can take their phone and turn on their television and change the channel from their phone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're sending a signal. So what makes you think a signal can't be sent from this to your body?
So let me kind of, because I'm a layman, sorry, I'm trying to understand the implication of this. So we're always concerned about having our cell phones within our proximity in our pockets, sleeping next to it, because of the fact that we've heard that it's not healthy to do so. You're saying that because of these injections and having certain things within your body, that potential damage is now further aggravated, because anytime electromagnetic fields interact with these particles, it could cause damage.
If the particles are open to receive the frequencies from those fields, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, they're programmable, and so yeah.
Wow. I mean, all this information you had, I mean, it's definitely set you upon a crusade of sorts. I use that in its most, morally uprighteous term, in the sense of like going county to county, talking to people, and really trying to, on the grassroots level, make change happen in lieu of being able to do that through like the media, through people actually reading your letter and not ignoring your letter. Could you tell us a little bit about your
sure. Well, we don't talk about this stuff when I go county by county, like unless I become friends with people and they want to like talk about it more. So when I talk about county by county is the phase 2-3 data that Pfizer submitted, because that's what you bring into a court of law. That's what's used in a court of law to successfully convict someone that acted criminally, or did violations. But this is criminal human experimentation. So what I do is I've just there's people, they're tired of being told there's nothing you can do. They're tired of being told that this is normal, that like some of these side effects and stuff are normal or they're not attributed to it. So as you go through the filings that Pfizer submitted to the FDA, they say, and in the FDA documents, they say it's going to cause blood clots. They say it's going to cause paralysis, strokes, birth defects, spontaneous abortions, myocarditis, pericarditis, encephalomyelitis, demyelinating disease. So like, deterioration of the myelin sheath of your nerve cells. I mean, so they say, so when people realized that in October 2020, the FDA met with industry and they knew this was the harmful clinical outcomes of the injections, people get very upset about that. And then when you go through the Pfizer's data, they say once you get 2 injections, you're more likely to come down with mild to moderate COVID. Within 1 week of the shot, you're likely to develop neurological disorders, liver disorders,
Wow.
go on a ventilator, go to the ICU, or die. I mean, it's all in their data. They say 100 children it was damning the risk-benefit ratio. They violated all the laws that regulate the biologics and vaccine industry. And because they violated quite literally every law that regulates the biologics and vaccine industry from phase 1 through phase 3, they are not protected by those laws. They acted as criminals. And they even violated the laws of the emergency use authorization, which they forfeited under their contract anyway. But even if they hadn't, they were supposed to be following HHS orders. And when you go through the Pfizer documents to the FDA, Pfizer was instructing the FDA to ignore their data. I have never seen anything like this in any phase 3 trial, or 2-3 trial. Well, there's phase 3, but you go through, when you read the data, that's my job, is I go through the documents, and then I would make the charts and graphs to make doctors, easy for them to understand the information. And then I write that fair balance, that this may cause heart attack, strokes, death, whatever, diarrhea. That's all in the fine print. But what was weird was that Pfizer calls out, the disease, disabilities, and death that are caused by their shots. And then they just say to the FDA, ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
They call it out, and then they say, ignore it.
I mean, it sounds like they're running the FDA pretty much.
It's what they were doing, yeah.
Wow.
Which is according to the DoD contract, they were to act as the independent review committee, which is unethical. But in my industry, people understand that the FDA they really don't read the fine print. They don't care. They default to the IRC to do the summary slide decks and go to the main charts and graphs, and that's it. And they default to them. But what was weird was that Pfizer points out in their submission all of these harms. Like it was very obvious.
Yeah.
And they just said, ignore it.
Wow. I mean, you sound like in your bio, you sound like you have enough evidence to take on these Pfizers in court. I mean, has there been any movement on that, or our courts would even do the right thing in entertaining a lawsuit of that kind?
I think courts will. I mean, it's a matter of finding an attorney general, a state prosecutor, a DA. I mean, there's just nobody or an attorney that's actually willing to take on Pfizer. So they're completely vulnerable for civil and criminal liability. But there's just nobody willing to go after them. Now, as far as the judges, I mean, if you read the transcript from the Brooke Jackson case, I can't remember the federal judge's name, but I think people have to understand the Brooke Jackson case. I don't think people understand what a whistleblower case is. It's that they're saying Pfizer defrauded. They come on behalf of the government. They say Pfizer defrauded the government, like this, and it happens all the time. And the whistleblower cases over the years, there's been more and more case law to say enough is enough, because like someone might say, oh, you were contracted to get 3,000 widgets a month, and we were only sending you 2,995. So we defrauded you. And so they're kind of like, look, enough with these tattletalers who are trying to retire and make enough money for them and 5 generations of their family by being a whistleblower. Unless the government agrees that it's significant, we're not gonna just rule in favor. And that was it. Basically, Brooke Jackson said, look, there was 3 people that probably had COVID, and you didn't ignore them. And the FDA was like, we wouldn't have changed our mind anyway. So it's not as nefarious as people, I think it is. But if you read the judge's comments back and forth with the attorneys, the judge was very much aware that Pfizer acted criminally. And like he was almost like, but you guys are arguing the wrong laws. You're bringing in the wrong case studies, right? So there's people don't understand, like a judge is like a referee, right? So they may be rooting for the home team, but if your receiver keeps running into your own end zone, he's like, guys, can't count it as a touchdown for you. You're going to the wrong end zone. So I think, when I sit down with people, whether it's sheriffs or victims or just activists, and I go through the data, and I think most judges, most of them are good people. I don't think 80% or 100% of them are evil, demonic, Soros planted people. I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe it's 20%. But I think they go through and they see how criminal this was, and that it is by definition criminal experimentation on humans, which is by definition biowarfare, which violates, the 5th and 14th Amendment. You will not be deprived of life without due process of law.
Yeah.
It violates all the laws for, humane treatment of human beings and the Geneva Convention. I think they would hear the case. But we have a lot of people who are saying Pfizer has immunity and the FDA trials are play theater. So if you walk in and go, this was play theater, what are you supposed to do with that? Or if you say this was entirely a DoD operation, well, then that means it's a military crime, which means that means that the jurisdiction again gets defaulted back to the military. And that's simply not what the documents state. The documents state that, the military says to Pfizer, you're operating separate from us. You're conducting the trial separate from us. You're working with the FDA. You're going to adhere to good manufacturing practices. You're going to adhere to the safety and efficacy laws of a standard FDA approved product. And that's what Barnes argued in the Brooke Jackson case. And the judge, Carlton Westland, Pfizer's attorney, tried to do this is play theater and it was based on fraud. And the judge goes, not on my dime. It's not even worth, he goes, it's inconceivable. It's not worth a nanosecond of my time to listen to your ridiculous stories about this is a secret DoD operation, right? That's an appropriate response in a court of law. Because if you go, this is a secret DoD operation, then you're going, well, nobody has jurisdiction then except the DoD. Yeah. So, I'm just confused as to why people on the freedom movement are making arguments that are taking away all of our power to do anything.
By putting it in military jurisdiction, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
So calling this play theater or kabuki theater, saying the FDA approval never happened, saying the FDA product was never manufactured. I mean, Pfizer doesn't deny that in a court of law. A federal judge doesn't deny it. Albert Bourla just did his Q1 earnings. He doesn't deny that there's FDA-approved product in the United States. He just did his Q1 earnings on Monday. So why would we be telling stories that would make it impossible for us to proceed with a civil or criminal case against Pfizer?
Yeah. I mean, I remember hearing you talk in San Diego about this, how the approach in general by the attorneys that have been trying to chip away at this issue hasn't been the right approach.
No, but Barnes did a great job in the Brooke Jackson case. I mean, he argued, read the $3 trillion Substack. It's a free Substack on Karen Kingston Substack. He argued that. He goes, no. You promised to deliver an effective vaccine to protect against SARS-CoV-2 and the variants. You promised it would be safe, and you promised it per FDA approval. And it's like reading my Substack, and he just says it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And they go, well, the clinical trials were not part of the the contract, therefore they never happened. And the judge goes, no, I read the contract. The clinical trials were paid for separately by Pfizer and BioNTech. It's not that they never happened, right? So Barnes did a great job of going to the judge, being like, read this contract, memorize it, because you're going to be hearing about it in the court of law. And everything that Carlton says to you sounds a lot like our freedom movement attorneys, which is, and I mean, Pfizer would love for us to think the clinical trials were play theater, and that they would love for us to believe that they have immunity against good manufacturing practices and immunity against a safety and efficacy law, but they forfeited all of that in the contract. Wow. So yeah, it's in our best interest to understand the contract.
Yeah. Wow. Now, I mean, where do you see this all heading? Obviously, I mean, it seems like the goal is ultimately to get this, justice, to get this, seen by the courts, and to have the people that, were part of this vast conspiracy really held accountable. But I mean, do you think that is a possibility in the future, near future, distant future?
My hope is that this is not going to happen at a national level. I think, I'm trying to work with communities, county by county. I need a bold sheriff or a bold prosecutor who understands that a biological agent, toxic, or device, and this is all three, that does not protect against infection, does not or prevent infection, does not protect against disease, and was done under fraudulent and actual criminal experimentation without peaceful purposes, meaning that it causes harm and injury, that causes harm and injury is a weapon. Therefore, they have the right, if they understand this, to actually seize these weapons across every vaccination facility in their county immediately without a warrant. Just like if there was a bomb threat, it's the same laws in every state.
Yeah.
And that's what my hope is. I mean, this whole concept, I've heard even attorneys go, well, the good news is Russia's working with Thailand. Well, first of all, Lieutenant General Kiryov, the head of Russia's nuclear and biowarfare, cites my med legal analysis to go after Pfizer. And yeah, and he ordered countries in Asia, Eastern Europe, and in Africa to nullify their contracts with Pfizer, citing my name, my med legal analysis. Everyone's like, that's great. No, it's horrible. The concept that we're waiting for Russia to work with other outside military powers to hold Pfizer and the United States to account. That's how Nazi Germany was dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what you want to do. You want to take whatever action you can at a county level. I don't know if there's a state. I don't know if
are you saying that it's bad that Russia is taking these steps versus us taking these steps?
Yes, I am saying that, Vem. I had this information in hand in May of 2021.
Yeah.
And Lieutenant General Kiryov started this investigation in January 2023. Mm-hmm. Why hasn't a senator, an attorney general, or a decent attorney picked up my work?
I mean, we haven't been very quick to move against really corrupt things happening in our government for a real long time. I mean, it just seems as though, yes, at one point we were like, post World War II, we were leaders in the world when it came to certain aspects of how the world is run, and holding people accountable for crimes and that sort of thing. But that seems to be kind of like ancient history at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I'm just saying there hasn't been, in May of 2021, I said the evidence is clear that these are weapons of biowarfare. And what happened in June of 21? Mm-hmm. We had leaders come forward and go, calm down. We shouldn't give these to children.
Yeah.
The vaccines must be a choice. That was a horrible idea. It was a terrible idea. Mm-hmm. People can't handle the idea that this would be a weapon or it contains nanotechnology. You sound crazy. No, people believe in people and leaders. And if our leaders had said that, we got pushed back anyway. Tell me, what did we win with the Stop the Mandates? How many children, how many adults haven't died with the Stop the Mandates?
Yeah.
We're in the middle of extinction of our species.
Yeah.
We're still being told, calm down. Okay. We don't want to call these weapons. We don't want to go after the head of the snake.
Mm-hmm.
It's
absolute insanity. I mean, and you're out there on a grassroots level. I mean, county by county, talking to sheriffs. I mean, how is that? How do you feel like that's going? Are you noticing any change? Is there any light at the end of this tunnel?
Yeah, I think it's just that we need more leaders to do it. I mean, in Collier County, they sent back $1.4 million to the NIH to stop educating.
And that's because of you, or?
Well, no, there's people there that were working with the commissioners for years now. There's activists in every county. I just come in and articulate data, as a strategist. I mean, I've changed the way doctors treat diseases around the world. I'm actually very good at taking complex information and making it compelling. I mean, I've trained thousands of reps and hundreds of doctors. It's not because of me, but I can help get a group of people over the finish line, right?
Yeah,
and so they passed an ordinance, they passed a resolution, but it's not happening fast enough because I'm truly, I don't think anyone else is saying the information that I'm saying. Or when they are sharing it, they're sharing it and saying, yes, this is a bioweapon, but it's the military operation, so there's nothing you can do about it, Mm-hmm. And so there's a spin at the end of what I call extrinsic fraud, so that victims don't take action. Mm-hmm. And there's also, I mean, I'm guilty of it, but that's why when I meet with people, I try to, there's too much information. So I try to keep it to the documents that you can bring into a court of law, that stand up in a court of law, that are standing up right now. The South African lawsuit against Pfizer is all about the phase 3 trial. It's all about, that whatever 48-page document, which is criminal.
Yeah.
So that's, I think things are going, they're going well when I'm investing. I mean, I was in Florida for a month just a couple of weeks ago,
Wow. This is, I mean, just on your own dime and time. It's just essentially a labor of love.
I want this. My goal is to get these pulled out of every community across the country, so I'm going where I'm finding people who are have that same goal, and they're organized, and they're disciplined, and they're motivated, and that's what I'm doing.
Wow. Wow.
I
Wow.
don't think people understand the ramifications of this technology, and it's in our food supply, it's in our water supply, but you've got to start somewhere. And it's very easy to go after Pfizer. They've left themselves so open and vulnerable by their paper trail. It's like shooting fish, but people are, I guess everyone's afraid of Pfizer.
Afraid, I mean, just obviously physically, the fact that they have so much legal power that they'll, basically war of attrition people right out of court.
That, I mean, they are the cartel. I mean, your show is called Blood Money. People kill for money. Like, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
We do. It's funny because it's like we look at every industrial complex, right? And it's just crazy because it seems as though every industrial complex is geared toward making us basically a profit mechanism, but our destruction being part of that journey. It's crazy. I mean, it's not, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's not just a medical industrial complex. Everything seems to be geared towards profit. Regardless of suffering right now, and it's a really sad state. I mean, it's like Blood Money after 85 episodes. I mean, I have a whole workout regimen now that's literally me detoxifying out of just hearing all this tragic information, to be honest with you.
But so people won't go. So Pfizer, they were paid $154 billion for Comirnaty in 2020, right? And then I think it was $68 billion in 2021 or something like that. And I forgot what the 2022 number is. I mean, 154 billion was primarily from the United States too, right? That was most of the money. So you asked about, like, what are people afraid of? They don't want to get killed. They don't want their families to get killed. They don't, if they have any dirt, they don't want that coming forward. This is not, this, Vem, your name of your show is Blood Money. What happens when people go after.
I mean, but you are the shining example of that. I mean, it's like and obviously your Christianity has a lot to do with the fact that it just seems like you don't really have a fear of death. Is not like in your top 10 list of concerns right now.
My concern is at first my biggest concern was, God's children, the lives of God's children. And now I'm realizing I'm worried about their souls.
Mm-hmm.
This is a truly demonic plan, and before the devil can destroy, he must deceive.
When you say,
so many people
souls,
have been.
Sorry, could we dive into that real quick? Just when you say you're worried about their souls.
I'm a Christian, and I believe that we were made perfectly in God's image, and I believe in the resurrection of Jesus, and I believe our salvation is through him and through his power. And what this technology does, is it hijacks. I mean, it's disgusting. It hijacks your genome, your cells. Yeah. It integrates it. I mean, Dr. Robert Malone went on Glenn Beck, and he said, the mRNA technology, if you will, is the suite of technologies into transhumanism. This is what the self-proclaimed inventor said. And Glenn Beck says, what's transhumanism? And he said, it is the genetic, modification, both biological, meaning non-human biological. So Malone specifically worked with insects and reptiles. I think that's disgusting. So it's the biological, mechanical modification to humans, to their genome.
And essentially making...
That's blasphemous. That's demonic.
Yeah. I mean, prior to the interview, we're talking about attorney Todd Callender, and interviewing him. He said that there's actually legal precedent, whether this holds up, against our Constitution and all that. But there's legal precedent where everybody who's gotten this vaccine is now considered not a Homo sapien. It's another word, Borg, something. I don't remember the exact term he used, but that's what they are classified as.
No, so under I'm going to read this. 1 USC Code 8, a person, a human being, a child, an individual is any person that's a Homo sapiens species born alive at any stage of development. Born alive means that they are, with respect to a member of the species of Homo sapiens, means that a complete expulsion or extraction from his or her mother at that member of stage of development. And then it says like severing of the umbilical cord.
Mm,
That's what a person, human being, and child is. So the legal definition is that you were extracted or expulsed from a female, from your mother,
mm,
and you're a human being. So whatever happens to you after, according to 1 USC 8 code, you're still a human
yeah.
being, according to law.
And what do you think in
I mean, according to US law. Now, I'm not, I just, that's the law.
in terms of their, their sinister agenda, like altering the human genome and all that? I mean, do you think that's part of it, is really their hatred of God's invention, and hence and therefore they need to pollute it, they need to change it, they need to make it something of their own? Or you think it's just, hey, we just need to kill a lot of people so we could essentially inherit the earth? Somebody used that term of,
I think, I mean, I think there's two, like they are mocking
mm,
God, and that's what they're trying to do. And then they're playing off of many human beings' need for, or desire for power and money. So it's not that people that are going along with this agenda, like you take a look at Pfizer's mRNA injections, they cause dozens, actually hundreds of new diseases. And now there's all these new companies that have synthetic biological solutions to these new diseases. So a lot of people are going to make lots and lots of
yeah,
money. So I think yes, there's an overarching, obviously this is, I believe, evil and blasphemous. And these people are mocking God, and they're mocking our species. I think when you understand the genetic materials and the contents of these injections, you would not allow this to happen to an animal, never mind a human being. It's truly mockery what's being put into people's bodies. I mean, it's disgusting. It's repulsive.
wow,
And so I think that's part of it. But I think most people in the industry are, if they are aware of the harms, they're like, well, I just created the myocarditis, amyloid wild type myocarditis went from being $200 million a year to now, 15 billion a
yeah,
year. So
yeah.
for us, so I think that's, I think you have to, when you talk about motivation, you have to, there's like tier about, about what they're motivated by within this nightmare that we're living through.
I mean, God is obviously an integral part of your life, and you seem to have made a very difficult choice, which is that you're, staring at the abyss and just trusting God. I'm going to walk, even though I don't see a bridge in front of me, and that seems to have held together to a certain degree. I mean, what was it in your life that built this faith in you to this degree? Because a lot of people claim they have faith, including a lot of our priests and ministers, and when this thing came along, they did not take courageous stands like you have.
I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't. I mean, I always had a strong faith in God? No. I mean, I was raised Episcopalian, and I'm smiling, and I shouldn't be. And I was around 13, I think, when I read Night by Eli, and I thought, what God would allow this to happen to his people, and I became an atheist. And I'm kind of smirking because I had my son read Night when he was 13 because
Night by Elia Wiesel, I think,
yeah,
or yeah, oh,
yeah.
wow, okay,
And he read it, in my living room on my couch,
hmm
and it was like watching myself, from 30 years ago. He went through the same, oh, this is horrible, or and I can't believe God would do this, and then like, okay, there's no God, right? So and he and I were baptized together when he was 8 years old. So he went through a journey that I went through as a teenager, which is you start looked at other religions, and I wanted to be with him as he was guiding that, and or guide him through that. So I don't, I think everyone has to go through their own education, their own journey to understand their relationship with God, right? And so my son actually went through a very similar journey that I did when I was his age. So you know, I mean, my faith in God has just been, I realize that, as I go back and read, many, many years later, many times over, every time you go back, it's the Bible's a lesson, and we are born with original sin, and we do have sin in us, and it's only through our 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 faith in God, our belief in God, and our servitude to God. Like, you must only serve Him, and many times myself is guilty of this too, where you think, oh, well, I'm doing the right thing because you're serving other people, and you're thinking I'm serving God, and a lot of times you're not. You're serving a need in yourself to get
Hmm.
some kind of affirmation or feedback, right? Um, and you have to kind of differentiate that and understand what, as you go through the Bible, those who are faithful and loyal to God, always there for them. And it doesn't mean your life is easy. It doesn't
Hmm.
mean your life is easy at all. But you know, um, it is survivable. So, you do survive, and it's to His glory. That's that's how I understand it, and that really, I guess that's what keeps me going. I'm not worried about things. I'm worried about um, I'm worried about eternity, for myself and my child, and I don't know why I worry about it for other people as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Christian, I mean, this is a battle between good and evil. I think back to when I was growing up, and there was that gray area where, you could be, I think, a little bit more agnostic about certain things, but it's definitely hard today, especially after 85 episodes of Blood Money, to feel like you don't have to choose a side with what's happening.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, this is truly evil. It's to the destruction it's to our extinction. I don't think people understand that.
Yeah.
And I mean, my last Substack I wrote, and I had been, researching the use of mRNA technology since the summer of 2021 in our food
Mhm.
supply. And what people need to understand is that when this mRNA, and in the last 2 years, they've sprayed it, over our oceans, over our lakes. They've put it into the crops, right? Well, it hijacks photosynthesis. So it hijacks the genes that are responsible for photosynthesis. So instead of plants now converting carbon dioxide and water into oxygen and glucose, they're converting them into these multi-species proteins or whatever they are. So we're decreasing the world's oxygen supply for all life
Hmm.
forms. So I mean, this is a extinction level
Yeah,
technology.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we were talking before this interview. You were asking me about some of the Blood Money episodes that strike me as, interesting to watch. The Nikki Florio episodes on geoengineering. I mean, she flat out shows evidence that they're trying to really kill the planet, which to me
Yeah.
is like, I don't know. I mean, it's just like, why would you want to kill the planet? Even if you're a bad elite group of people, right? And whatever, you want to inherit the earth, you want the population reduced by 90% or whatever the Georgia Guidestones used to say. Um, I mean, the logic of destroying the entire planet, it just baffles me. It really baffles me. It makes me think about all sorts of crazy theories about what is at the end of that, pyramid of the elite that would cause them to want to do that? I mean, have you ever thought about that? Is it just pure demonic evil of destroying God's creations and pretty much leaving nothing but ashes?
There are people that hate God.
Hmm.
Um, they've There are people who have had in their lives, their sufferings have caused them to become so bitter and resentful
Hmm.
that they want to see destruction. And then some of them, like, Elon Musk, believes that it's, destiny to merge humans with artificial intelligence, so to become part of AI, and I guess of a Borg-like system, a hive system. Like, that's a theme, the swarm, the hive, and the DoD.
Hmm.
So there's just people that simply hate God, and I think their joy is what Satan's joy is to deceive people. I think people are gonna have to brace themselves for betrayal.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people that have been leading us and have been giving us false information so that you don't take action, so that you're overwhelmed with information or you're given the wrong information. so that you don't actually take action to try to stop this. And I think when people realize those that have betrayed them, who have been acting as allies, meanwhile they're working on behalf of our enemies, I think that's going to be a shell shock for people,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And I think that's prevalent. I mean, they don't even cover it up. I mean, for goodness sakes, the U.S. Army has if you go to their homepage, it's all about PSYOP. So our own military is now saying, hey, we need people who can get involved with communities, meet individuals, make those friendships, create those loyalties, and persuade their opinions so they don't take action.
Gestapo.
I mean,
a milder version of Gestapo.
I don't think it's milder. I think it's much more cruel.
Yeah.
That we see, the concept is you have these altruistic figures, and the idea is that you're fed false information so that you don't do the right thing to protect yourself and your communities.
So crazy. So crazy. I mean, straight up, it's an attack on humanity. Karen, is there anything that we didn't talk about in this episode that you'd want to, mention in closing? Any way to, if you're doing fundraising for any specific, agendas, events, or anything? The mic is yours.
I think just my Substack. You can go to Karen Kingston Substack. The $3 trillion Substack. It's free. Can We Talk is the draft letter that I've been using with local governments and commissioners and stuff. It's not finalized. I'm working on another version, but that's free as well. So I would just check out the Karen Kingston Substack. I check out, Dr. Malone, is he invested in transhumanism or humanity? Because that goes into the convergence of the biodigital realm with humans. And again, it doesn't, this isn't a judgment. Dr. Malone does think that merging the biodigital realm, per his words, is ethical. I don't, but you can read it, and you can hear him talk about that, and you can look at his patents that go into some of the detail about merging human biology with reptilian and insect biology, and then the digital realm. So people think this is ethical. I think we have leaders who are just trying to get us to agree with them. So if you read Unrestricted Warfare, the most important line is to not compel your enemy with force, military force, but to use every means necessary to get them to agree to your ways, to agree to your goals. And so that's what's happening.
Wow. I'm going to ask you one more question. I was looking at the clock and I saw it was about to hit an hour. But this is so interesting that I got to ask another question here. You had mentioned people like Malone, Elon Musk. I'll throw Trump in there as a part of this question. I mean, these are individuals that a lot of people in the freedom movement look at as like, those are the good guys. Those are the guys that are saving the day. But you're talking about how Elon Musk is into transhumanism. We talked about Malone and the things that he's into in terms of transhumanism. Then you have somebody like Donald Trump that was really pushing these vaxes, has yet to, as somebody that has been considered by at least, people in the freedom movement as an arbiter of truth and willing to stand up against the lies of our government, corrupted politicians. He's had that image, but yet, he hasn't really said anything about these being a death jab and all the obvious things that you've pointed. Is there no good guys out there right now? Are we on our own? You going out there county to county, me doing the Blood Money podcast, and I don't know, maybe 50 podcasters, influencers that are actually, speaking the truth.
I think we are very infiltrated, in regards to Trump. At this point, there's no excuse to not say anything. If you read my Substack about Tucker Carlson, when someone is of that much power and influence, what they say is more powerful than what a loved one or a spouse or a family member says. So when a family member would beg to get the injection, like a mother or a sister or someone that's in the U.S. military, and that your brother or your son says, well, if it was really bad, Mom, Trump would tell me. So there's so much power. And so Carl Jung has a great, I think it was Carl Jung, this is Jordan Peterson, if you're wondering someone's intentions, look at the outcomes. So if you're trusting in leaders, look at what the results are. So with Trump, he did a lot of great things, but there was Operation Warp Speed, and he has not come out against the shots, and millions of people are dying, not just in the United States, but around the world. So if you want to know someone's intentions, look at their outcomes, and look at their outcomes based on their power, their influence, and their resources, and then question what their intentions are.
Yeah. Wow.
That's all I have to say. I mean, that doesn't mean give up hope. Like, this whole concept. I mean, I was got many phone calls from friends of Dr. Malone telling me to back off because, he's the leader. And if people question him, then they're not going to believe anyone, and everything's going to fall apart. Well, that's a CIA tactic. And it's also a high school cheerleading tactic as well. I hope you're not dumb enough to not question authority. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So,
I mean, do you suspect
leaders who are worthy of being leading people they can face confrontation. I mean, have these people never sat in a budget review or a board meeting? Give me a break. You question people aggressively sometimes when there's enough at stake. And now we're talking about our country and literally humanity at stake. Yet we're not supposed to aggressively question people when they present fraudulent information. It doesn't make sense.
And I know this would be speculation, but do you suspect that like a Malone is like a CIA plant, or is he just, somebody that has beliefs that we don't necessarily agree with?
I don't agree with his beliefs. And, that's basically it. These are bioweapons.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the inventor of mRNA technology. He claims that, right? He has how would he ever come forward and say my technology is a bioweapon? Then he's an international war criminal.
Mm-hmm.
So there seems to be a conflict of interest in his leadership position and his beliefs and what's actually happening as the results of his invention. Again, if you question someone's intentions, look at the outcomes. What are the outcomes of Dr. Malone's invention?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't know anything about the CIA and stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, I see what you're saying in terms of and the fact that, while there's been some truth, it's like keeping away a lot of the truth is also, I mean, it's problematic. I mean, it shows somebody's hand, really. This is awesome. Karen. It's it's funny. It's all this information is just so heavy, but we have to grapple with it, and we have to share it with people, and make sure that we can do what we can. It feels like the Titanic's already hit the iceberg, and right now it just seems like we got to fill as many people in those lifeboats as possible,
Yeah, I mean, if leaders will rise up. I mean, it's kind of like if you have when you have a cabinet, it's always full. I mean, when you make space, next thing you know, 2 weeks later, it's filled up again. Like, it's just, I don't think people should fret over the fact that maybe a leader that they've been following for weeks, months, or years is maybe not what they thought. That's okay. New leaders will arise. But, what I said on the first time I went on Stu Peters, he asked me for advice. I said, because I understood the level of deception we were walking into, I was like, people need to look at facts and evidence, right? We're all our wisdom. I believe our wisdom comes from God. We're all brilliantly made in his image, and we have this wisdom. So look at facts and evidence. Don't believe people. And then if people are consistent, like, with their facts and evidence, we all make mistakes, but if it's consistent, then, at some point, maybe you can start not having to do so much fact checking on them and trusting some of the stuff that they say. But, what I was surprised at is just the venom that came at me whenever I would question someone that said something that was blatantly false. They would say the exact opposite of the truth, and all this venom would come out me. How dare you question that person? That makes you look bad. I was like, well, what they said was blatantly false, and if they are an expert, then they lied. And okay, well, how does that make me a bad person to understand, to look at the evidence that they cited and say that's not what it says? It says the opposite of that.
I mean, it's like when you mentioned like 100 people worldwide read that document by Pfizer, I think it was, or the in 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that is,
Mhm.
and then you look at the doctors that stood up. We have 1 million doctors, but 400, 500 of them stood up to, these mandates and were vocal about it. I mean, I don't even know is that like less than 0.1%? When you look at those ratios, it's insane. The level of cowardice is insane. The amount of people that are just willing to be like another brick in the wall, like drones, is, I don't even know how we got here. I thought we had a much more rebellious spirit in this country, to be honest with you.
I did too. I thought, I come from an Irish Catholic family, and I have 3 older brothers, so
Uh-huh.
I got a fighting spirit. Maybe that's where my belief in God came.
Seriously.
So, yeah. There was a lot of, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So much respect to you,
anyway.
though. So much respect to you for what you've done. I mean, just to strengthen your voice, it just, yeah, mind blowing, Karen. I know what this fight entails, and I mean, you've been right in the front line and taking the hits, and really, I commend you on your courage. You're an American hero.
Oh, thank you. Just doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I guess. So,
Yeah,
but thank you.
yeah, thank you. Is there anything else in closing that you'd want to mention, or?
Um, I would just say God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound, which is an intelligent mind, an intelligent and rational mind. And, when you get overwhelmed, take some time for yourself, clear your mind, connect with God. If you need guidance on what to do, there's a book called the Bible. It's very helpful.
Very helpful.
So
Very helpful. Yeah.
I'm not going to go in there. And I think it's important to connect with people.
Yeah.
Tell the people that you love them every day. See them as often as you can, and let's break out of this virtual world.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you had that moment where God really spoke to you in Mexico, you were on holiday, right? So you're out there kind of clearing your mind, and in that moment, it really, the right path kind of struck you.
Oh no, I just had this heavy Mexico. I was in church after I called 911 the second time, and I was listening to worship music, and because we were performing, and I just asked God to give me some words to comfort me. Like I was I was kind of like, give me some word to comfort me or something. And then I just heard, how many times do I need to make you call 911 before you're going to call 911 for my kids?
Wow.
I mean,
Not comforting words of action. I mean, those are, but yeah.
Well, if you ever wonder, like, how do you know it's not your ego or God talking? You don't want to do it. I mean, every time I've really prayed and connected with God, I mean, it's never, he sharpens his children. I mean, he trains us, he trains his warriors. So yeah, if God's telling you to go on vacation, it's not God. Okay, that's not. Yeah.
He gives you work. He gives you work to do. We're not here to go on vacation, right?
Yeah. That's not God. Yeah.
That's awesome. This has been wonderful, Karen. I really appreciate it. It's so awesome having you on our show. And to the viewers out there, thank you so much for showing up to this episode of Blood Money. Please check out AmericaHappens.com, where we have our episodes posted on a daily basis, including Gloves Off with Joy Gilbert, Mindy Robinson's Conspiracy Truths, Gianna Michelli's The State National University, our new show Vibe Time. Hopefully I didn't forget anybody, but check out AmericaHappens.com. All of our shows are on there. I will see you on the next episode of Blood Money. Thank you.